Chritine, it's amazing to have rediscovered Sophus Tromholt's original glass plate negatives in Norway. Take me through how this came about, and how did you feel when you discovered them?
It started really with a film festival I went to in January 2015. It was Indigenous Peoples Film Festival, so there were a lot of Sami films being shown up in the high Arctic. And I was in the Sami Parliament, and there were a number of books there, and there were these incredible portraits of Sami taken by someone called Sophus Tromholt, who I'd never heard of. And I was travelling to the Faroe Islands for the total eclipse not long after that. So I went via Bergen to look at his archive. And going through the archive, I found these images of auroras, and I remember saying to the curator, I thought he didn't photograph auroras because his process failed. And she said, no, those were his drawings, but he photographed the drawings. So that's how I came across them, and thought immediately that these were actually pieces of art, and I wanted to have them seen as artworks. And I then got a commission from Timespan Gallery in Helmsdale in Scotland. So that was the first exhibition of them in 2015 as huge prints, what you're seeing here in Cambridge, exhibited as artworks.
Tromholt's drawings are clearly beautiful artworks on the wall of the gallery in the Polar Museum, but he was very much a scientist in his approach. Do you see them as art, or science, or both?
I think really they're pieces of both. I did my doctoral research on bog bodies, on the relationship between the art and poetry, and particularly Yeats and Seamus Heaney. And I mentioned because Seamus Heaney's famous bog poems were inspired by the bog bodies. And when I view those, I see those as sculptures, and yet they are pieces of archaeological artefact, or the people are regarded in that way. And there's a sort of reverence that one can have towards them. So I think it's possible for a piece of art to be both.
Many of Sophus Tromholt's notebooks and sketches are presumed lost. Do you think that one day they'll be rediscovered?
Well, Sophus Tromholt died in poverty, and it's unlikely anything will have been preserved unless it was preserved by accident. His wonderful glass plates ended up in the Bergen archive because they were in the collection of somebody else. So it's possible he either sold them to someone or they were somehow acquired. And that might be what happens with the notebooks, because although he kept incredible, meticulous, detailed notebooks, and he would possibly sketch pads, a lot of this material was destroyed. So it's very sad, but perhaps there will be an accidental discovery.
The Northern Light drawings were created in the 1880s. What relevance do you think they have for us today?
I think it's interesting that we're having this exhibition, and nicely timed, we're having this exhibition at the time of people being very aware of auroras and trying to go out and spot them. And it's quite often people are taking pictures of auroras which look better than what they can actually see for themselves with the naked eye, which leads to all sorts of questions about, what are we actually seeing when we look at them, and how much do we really feel we want to preserve them in our own retina. I think what we're seeing with these drawings is how Sophus Tromholt interpreted the auroras. There might be some artistic license there, but he was basically drawing them because he needed illustrations for his book. I think what they help us to do is to see the auroras, and particularly because they're black and white, we're not sort of dizzied with the amazing colours. We can actually see the shape and the contours, which I think is very helpful. And in terms of what they tell us about Tromholt himself, I think basically he was determined to find a way to capture them, so he had to do it somehow.
The exhibition features the voice of the well-known actor Michael Maloney reading Sophus Tromholt's words from the book Under the Rays of the Aurora Borealis. What led you to Michael?
Well, I've known Michael for a number of years, and I've worked with him before on other installation projects.
To give a universal description of the manner in which the Aurora Borealis appears is very difficult, as not only does the geographical position cause variations in the character of the phenomenon, But even in the same locality, there is such a difference in form that no one aurora can be compared to another.
And he was very generous and very interested to do this as a recording. And yes, as you can hear, he's absolutely perfect for it.
Sophus Tromholt lived in the Arctic with the Sami for a time. You've retraced his footprints as part of this exhibition. Tell me a little about your experience with the Sami.
Well, I've had an interest in the Sami for a number of years. I think particularly because with the surname Finn, and I've always been curious as to what Sami culture was about, and I'm very interested in the idea also of living very simply. And I first experienced Sami culture in 2015 during the dead of winter, and spent a lot of time with a herder family and staying in a Sami-run guest house, and so eating the food. And although part of it was sort of tourism, the other part of it was actually this is how people live and survive, and I found it really fascinating to talk with them. So when I was working on the Sophus Tromholt project, I was always determined to go to Curator where he was, and this time I chose to go in the summer, so it was during actually midsummer, literally. And again, I stayed with a Sami family in a campsite where they followed all the Sami tradition, and a real sense of pride in the heritage, which it was really wonderful to be around. And it was amazing as well to talk with these people about Sophus Tromholt, because the name was familiar to them, and they knew people who were descendants of the people he photographed.
Chritine, you're an artist, curator, journalist, archaeologist, and you guest curated this exhibition, but you also produced an artwork in response to it. What was the idea behind this piece, and what was your artistic process?
Well, when I first approached the Polar Museum with the idea of doing this exhibition, or rather bringing it as a new installation in a really perfect context, I didn't really know if I wanted to make a response to it at that time, because the works themselves really spoke so loudly. But when I knew I was going up to Curator, I felt that I wanted to respond to that as a journey. And when I was up there, I took a lot of photographs, and I gathered some driftwood at the river. And actually, I wanted to convey a sense of presence and absence, because there was something so powerful and so fundamental going on with Sophus Tromholt and his open-air studio there, and there's nothing there now. And I wanted really to just convey a sense of that space, and also to play with the ideas of presence and absence, which are so apparent in photography, and particularly in a darkroom where something literally comes to light and is illuminated, in the way that Sophus Tromholt's glass plates of the auroras have been illuminated through the various processes which led to the digital reproduction of them, and then printed. And I really wanted to work with also, I realised now, sort of the poignancy of Sophus Tromholt, and having this incredible studio, but also until very recently, very little was known about Sophus Tromholt. Then his Sami portraits were realised to be wonderful pieces of art, but also of record and protected by UNESCO. And the prints themselves, as I said, they were in the archive, but they hadn't really been revealed as or regarded as works of art. And so again, it was the idea that they were present in the archive but hadn't been seen, they hadn't been valued in that way. What I came up with really was a lot of photographs taken in a very simple way with a digital camera, Leica, and then just visiting the place and spending some time alone, getting my feet wet and walking on the mud, which is just behind where Sophus Tromholt's studio was, and gathering driftwood there, which I felt had some dialogue with the wood that Sophus Tromholt's illustration sat on when he took the photographs for the glass plates. And so these came together really in the works that I've put together as small deliberately postcard size, because that's again to do with presence and absence of people being in a place or not being in a place, and holding on to the memory of place as well.
Well, thank you, Chrissy. It's been a little glimpse into your world, but also into the wonderful exhibition, and I'm certainly enjoying looking at it, and I hope lots of visitors do as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.